Nerd On the Podcast is proudly partnered with Apogee Electronics and Odyssey Headphones, leaders in the field of audio.
Gaslighting is really serious, and I don't want to make a joke.
Yeah,
but then when you said,
don't make it.
and then when you were like, when Tom came in, I'm like, is she going to make a joke about me?
No.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Nerd On, the podcast you didn't need, but you deserve, and where all levels of nerd are welcome, no matter how transparent you are.
Oh.
What?
Your opacity notwithstanding.
Notwithstanding.
It's all the way to the left.
In 1897, H.G. Wells published a novel that would see its legacy live on in classic films, comic books, and referenced in all forms of television. In 2020, part of Universal's slate of retold classics, once dubbed the Dark Universe, R.I.P., we were given this retelling. Today's topic is 2020's The Invisible Man. Dun, dun, dun. But before we get into that, let's introduce the host. I am Josh.
I am Tom.
I'm Caitlin.
And this episode is brought to you in part by the members of the Nerd On Nation that is powered by
Patreon.
As a member of the Nerd On Nation, you do get fun perks. Like you get early access to these episodes, you get bonus episodes that nobody else hears, and we just go off the rails on those sometimes. We just kind of pick topics and talk about them. Like a recent one was we talked about gatekeeping. We've talked about sometimes it's really like op-ed kind of stuff where we're just kind of sitting around talking about something. And the Nerd On Nation gets to suggest topics sometimes. We listen to those kind of things. Also, you get what we call the Nerd On Nudge for our other weekly show, the Nerd On Update, in which we answer your questions first. Lots of fun perks over there. We just recently dropped some new tiers, so check those out. And we're really close to a goal over there. And once we reach that goal of 60 members of the Nerd On Nation, the nation gets to pick a topic for one of our episodes, one of our Nerd On the Podcast episodes. So get over there. Join it. Even if it's as low as $1. $1 helps. It's cray-cray. Like one of the a friend of the show, Stephen Ford, even he said a member of a Patreon is so much more than anything that we make from any of our advertising. So check it out. Mm-hmm. And it's a really dope community. Really cool people over there. So yeah, check that out. nerdon.tv/Patreon, and check out our Discord.
Oh,
yes.
That's what Tom runs, separate from our Discord, which you can find
Discord.
at nerdon.tv.
I am the custodian of the Discord.
Discord. Discord.
Yes.
For your
Discord.
touching pleasure.
nerdon.tv/Discord. That's another great community that is growing by the week. Triple digits, keeps on going. Really cool people. And there's a channel for everything to discuss anime, movies, video games, even gardening. Even if you found a fun meme that you're like, I need to share this, there's a place for that. So check it out.
True.
And a big shout out to our partners, Apogee and Odyssey. This is, I think, our last remote episode 199. We have been remote since March 15th.
Wow.
That was the last time. It was like Fables and something else that we recorded, which is like episode 130 or something. I don't know. It was a long time ago. I don't even know what life looks like anymore. But yeah, Apogee and Odyssey have made the journey and the path to high quality content. Content.
I am the custodian of all the content.
Yes. So a big shout out to them. The Apogee Hype mic is a great versatile mic that we will continue to use on all of our streams and any kind of content like that. So check it out. You can use it on Mac, PC, iOS devices. It's a good time. Check it out. And Odyssey headphones, we're using their LCD ones, but they have their Mobius. They also have their Penrose, their gaming headset that is wonderful. So check them out, Odyssey headphones. And before I move on, if you like what you hear today, stop by, rate and review, and share us with your friends and family. Like those ratings and those reviews, wherever they are, whether they're Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, I think Castbox also has a place to review. Those kinds of things do help. They help us grow by way of people seeing it and going, oh, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to check it out.
You guys can make us the biggest podcast on this planet.
Damn!
If you helped us.
Damn!
Did you know that? Isn't that wild?
That's wild.
Isn't that wild? With your help, you could do that just by rating something and giving it a review for free. That doesn't cost you anything,
For
babe.
free.
And it's kind of like when you take a blanket out of the dryer when it's all warm and fluffy, and then you have already made yourself a cup of tea, and then you go sit on the couch and watch a cooking video on the big screen with your cup of tea and your very warm blanket. That's what it's like to get a review.
And then you throw the blanket, and then there's a silhouette underneath that blanket, and you're like,
Oh. Oh, that got dark quickly.
No, Tom, why did you turn my good one into a bad one?
because you've done these like they were themed with the episode, and this didn't have anything to do with it.
I just wanted it to feel nice.
It's
Well,
like getting.
I think that's a good segue into this.
You.
Into this. I got nothing.
No.
This thrilling
Time to talk about the
episode.
Invisible Man.
Oh yes.
Da-da-da-da-da.
No. It's wrong music as well. So everyone, this is where we're going to talk about our first two segments of our show. And the first one deals with the end of our show. So that brings us to
Guess that Grump.
Dun,
He's
dun,
an
dun, dun,
invisible
dun,
man.
dun, dun, dun,
He's got an
dun,
invisible
dun,
plan that you get by the end of the movie. He's invisible man.
Guess that Grump.
I don't think there was really a theme song to this movie. I
No.
think there was more just like crazy
Screams.
sound design.
Yeah.
And
Or-
no
or-
sound.
Where it was just like, "Boom." It's like, oh,
Wait,
God.
everyone be quiet for a minute. Just be quiet. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
We love dead air on a
We love it.
podcast show.
Somebody just
so-
looked down on their podcast app and went,
It's like,
"Is
oh God,
something
did it
wrong?"
stop?
They like unplug their headphones, like, what the hell? Our first segment of the show is going to be Guess That Grump, where we're going to go around the digital screens, hopefully for the last time, and guess who's going to have the lowest score from 1 out of 5. And at the end of the episode, we'll reveal that whoever has the lowest score, no matter how high it is, will be the Grump for the week. Now, something brand new that we're doing is we're going to have all the hosts write down their
Doing it right
numbers
now.
before we get started. So none of the voting kind of influences the number, the rating at the very end. And since Corey can't join us, I'll be handling all of the votes that I'll talk about later on. But since I always explain that was kind of brand new, I'm going to go first.
Do it, Tom.
I'm
Do
going
it.
to guess. I'm going to guess Caitlin will be the Grump for this episode.
That's a fair bet.
Okay.
That's Caitlin. So let me write that down. So,
What makes you think that? Just curious.
You had to use your nerves. You had
well,
to-
Nerves?
I think Caitlin, you can enjoy the mastery at how the film is made, but then also, how much do you enjoy a pretty horrific telling of something that happens in America a lot?
Mhm.
So like it's not lost on you how well this is done, but how much you enjoy it bases your number.
It's true.
So I don't know how
That
much
is
you
true.
enjoy this.
Okay.
Like I don't
Alright.
think you'd be like, "Hey guys." Not that you don't
Man.
you don't sound like that at all.
Yeah, no, I don't. Not even
Hey,
remotely.
everybody.
You maybe sound like Mickey Mouse.
I think at sometimes your voice is actually deeper than mine. So it's like,
Yeah, I
that's
know.
my voice. That's my voice. Because I'm like, guys, let's go watch it.
Actually, yes, he does do that voice a lot. So
I
yeah.
do.
Anyway.
So that's my vote. So who would like to go next?
Caitlin, because you were voted. Just
I
popcorn.
think
Yeah,
it's
popcorn.
gonna be
It is
Josh.
May. Okay.
I was gonna see the Scantron, but then I thought about it for a second. I was like, nah.
Now, Josh, who's your vote?
Actually, I think that my vote will be Caitlin.
Okay.
Two votes for the Caitlin. All right. Now, if you are listening to this at work, driving, or you're doing this while
You're in the shower,
tending,
and there's
in the
somebody
shower,
like putting
tending
their
to your
hand-
yard, I know some of y'all got new houses, and then some of y'all, are doing some things in the backyard, for the summer, sun's out, buns out.
Oh, not murdering people and burying their bodies. Totally different thing.
No,
Sorry.
There's a movie
Went off on a
called
tangent.
there's a movie called The Last Supper where they do that. But anyways, we should do that movie. Anyways, no, that's not. But and you're like, man, Tom should have voted for Josh, and maybe you'd be right, maybe you'd be wrong, but we will shout out your vote if you join this lovely thing that Josh was talking about earlier, the Nerd On Nation, and you got to be part of the Guess That Grump poll that will feature your vote if you are right at the end of the episode. So be part of it. Your vote here matters. You matter, and this show is better with you in it. So with that, I do collect the votes. Typically, it's Corey, but Caitlin, the Nerd On Nation has spoken. And Tom, it's not you either. It's Josh.
Oh,
so
the misdirection.
we have it. The turn. It's like an M. Night Shyamalan film. There's a twist for no reason.
I've been watching a lot of Great British Bake Off, and it reminds me of like Paul Hollywood's, like shaking his head, like, nah, that was amazing.
If this podcast episode was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, it would end up being like, I'm not even in the episode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because 100%
Mike was unplugged the entire time.
Yeah. I've been frozen the whole time.
You mean like our update show?
Yeah.
So with that, everyone, the order of who will reveal their rating first. Tom with no votes. And since Josh has the nation vote, Caitlin will go second, and then Josh will go last because Caitlin and Josh are both tied for two. So there you have it. Now we'll go to the complete spoiler of that with our initial reactions and our first impressions. Not spoiling the movie, but just telling you how we felt about the film.
I'll go first.
Go first, please.
So, very sad day. This was the last movie that I saw before we went into quarantine.
Same, bro.
and Bonnie and I don't normally go see thrillers. It's just not something that we normally will go to the theaters. The next one that we might do is Saw, Spiral. Very interested to see that. But anyway, so this one was the last movie that I saw in the theaters. And I remember walking out going, wow, that actually was really good. Like, it wasn't like, I mean, there are like some cliche horror, like thriller movie things in there, but it was like, oh, wow, that was genuinely like a legit good movie. This was fun. This is great. This is cool. And then watching it again, same experience. It's like, oh, this didn't suck to watch. It was like,
what high praise.
Well, I mean, like thrillers, they're hit and miss sometimes.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they can be this like, ooh, yikes. But
I feel like horrors are hit and miss, but thrillers, I feel like, you get that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but this movie does a really good job of building tension.
Mm-hmm.
Just building the tension, then giving you that payoff where you're like, oh shit.
And it doesn't punish you, I feel like.
No.
To me, it doesn't punish you.
Yeah.
No. So, I mean, the reason why we're doing this episode is that we did have this on the docket. This was going to be an episode that we did. It was like we're like getting ready for it, and then we went into quarantine. Nobody could go see it except for I saw it on the day that it came out. But then that's it. Yeah. So now we're doing it. A year and like 14 months later, we're doing it.
Yeah. After it got snubbed at the no.
It did.
But Caitlin, you or me?
You.
Okay. So same thing with Josh. I watched this in theaters. I think this was the last film I saw. And I walked out absolutely just delighted. I was like, oh my God, this is a really good movie. And I don't know off the top of my hand, even though I wrote the notes, but like I don't know a lot of the director's works, but I know the last film he did before this was Upgrade. And that is and that sorry, that's just kind of the thing with these directors and doing thrillers like this where like it's just so clean. It's so clean, well done, made films for such a low budget. And it's just like, wow, for those 2 hours.
I didn't know the budget. Wow.
Was so low. And it's like for those 2 hours, you got me. You were like, I'm too afraid to leave the chair, but I can't blink because I might miss something. Like it's not like,
because especially for something like this where you might miss something.
You will miss things.
And that's the thing where that's to me true like cinema-y where like and I feel it's funny and I feel like you can't do this you could do this with a lot of old films where like people are just talking and you could look at your phone and then look up who's in the movie. But here, like you see people talking and something might be going on in the background. And like, that's the lovely thing. And so it's like, you can't look at your phone, you know, you must watch the entire time. It's like when a film does that and makes the audience be like, if I move my eyes, I may miss a very important detail. And I think those are like, you know, reserved experiences that should be in the theaters, but you know, watch the film as best as you can watch them. Anyways, I love this film, and I watched it 2 more times after I watched it in theaters. Once with some friends, Kyle and Charlie, and my roommate Rashid. We did every day we watched a horror movie for Halloween.
Yeah,
and I for sure made this my pick. I was like Invisible Man, and it was so funny because shout out to my boy Kyle. He was like, oh, this is so good. Then I was like, welcome to the party, man. It's cool, man. I get it. But he's like, oh, but it's so like important about what it talks about, and I was like, yeah, I know, man. I get it. That's why I picked it. And it's just like, it's great. And I think like once you peel back the layers of like, oh, this is like a movie about this and escaping and surviving. And it's like, but what is it actually saying? And you're like, oh, you know, again, and that's what I think true cinema starts to become, where it's like, it has something to say. What is it about? And then I watched it again, you know, getting ready for this episode. And I'm just like, God, I feel like if more films were like I feel like all small indie budget film, I mean, it's not even indie budget, but like all small budget films strive to be this, like we would be in this like level of like, there's going to be huge blockbusters that make $1 billion. And then there are all these great like genred films that are just so focused and just so well told. I'm like, heyday. Anyways. But yeah, Caitlin.
So I took a stab at what I thought this movie was going to be before I saw it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is going to be gaslighting the movie. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw it, while I was watching it, I was like shocked at how well they did all the tension, all of the motivations of characters, I 100% questioned.
They have a lot of everything. Oh shit moments too, of like,
so many oh shit moments. And when it ended, I was like, yeah, this was gaslighting the movie. Like, it was exactly what I expected it to be. And I'll get more into the nitty gritty of that later.
So she didn't,
because I don't want to spoil anything.
So she didn't like the movie, and I'll move on to the next 2 segments now.
So hey, quick to assume.
Hey, Kaylin, this was your thing, and I'm part of the problem.
I see that. I see that.
So we'll go to the next 2 segments of the show, which are going to be our brief synopsis and our production. And the brief synopsis will be given to us by
me.
Hey.
So, The Invisible Man is a 2020 American science fiction horror film written and directed by Leigh Whannell, loosely based on the novel of the same name by H.G. Wells. It follows a woman who believes she is being stalked and gaslit by her abusive and wealthy ex-boyfriend, even after his apparent suicide, and ultimately deduces that he has acquired the ability to become invisible.
And Josh, you might have read the original novel, maybe?
I did.
Okay, so, and you can kind of talk to a little bit of the changes and stuff, but not for you, Tom.
Not for you. No, it was a long time ago that I went through this like thing where I just read a whole bunch of H.G. Wells, and it's good stuff. It's nice to return to the classics.
The production will be given to you by me. It's distributed by Universal Pictures, who gave us such things as Jurassic World, The Fast and Furious, and Back to the Future. The director Leigh Whannell directed Insidious Chapter 3, Upgrade, and the upcoming remake of Escape from New York.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, John Carpenter, baby. Anyways, producers Jason Blum of Blumhouse, who produced such film as Get Out, Whiplash, and Paranormal Activity. Paranormal Activity, which made Blumhouse like the biggest horror studio ever in the world. And then the second producer is Kylie Kylie Dufresne, who produced The Sapphires, Upgrade, and Holding the Man. The writers is Lee Winnell, who wrote films such as Saw 2, and Dead Silence, characters and concept created by H.G. Wells. The cast, Elizabeth Moss from Us,
good.
Handmaid's Tale, and Mad Men. Aldous Hodge, who's from Straight Outta Compton, Hidden Figures, and Die Hard with a Vengeance. Storm Reed from A Wrinkle in Time, Slate, and Euphoria. Harriet Dyer from No Activity, Love Child, The Other Guy. Michael Dorman from Daybreakers, Patriot, Triangle. And Oliver Jackson Cohen from Faster, Going the Distance, What's Your Number? The release date, February 28th, 2020. And then we did our live show, and then we all went home. Yep. And the runtime was 124 minutes. The budget for this film, $7 million.
Wow.
And it grossed $143.2 million. So holy poopy, that was a lot of money. A Rotten Tomato score, 91% from critics from 406 users and 88% from audience from 10,000 plus users. And that is all the production. Now we can go into spoiler full territory. So for all the listeners who have not watched this yet, go watch it.
Take a pause.
Go start your Cinemark account to watch it for free, or to watch it with your Amazon Prime or Hulu, and then come back. And then we're back. And
I'm gonna start.
So, favorite parts, favorite character. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna start because I don't want anybody to take this away from me.
Do it.
As fucked up as a scene as it is, the restaurant.
Oh, God.
When she well, she doesn't, but
yeah,
when the sister gets killed,
murdered.
And and talking about the amount of thought that went into the director, I read an article that was about just that scene and using misdirect and things like, this is what you're focusing on. You've got the waiter, you've got these like little things that you're like, oh, we're finally, there's a little bit of like a
relief.
Breather, and you're like, okay, cool. And then this, and you're like, and it's her sister. Like, it's not just like some person, it's her sister. And her snapping moment that it's just like that scene. I remember being in the theaters, like feeling like, I'm safe. This is fine. We're good.
Not fine. Not safe.
Oh my God.
And so for everyone listening, we talked about it a lot, and we might talk about it a lot in this segment too. Gaslighting, if you look it up if you're not familiar with it. I remember it took me a while to actually understand what the term was, but look it up. Manipulate someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. And
oh my God.
That's very much what happens here, to like Josh's point. Like, you're at this point where you think you're safe, but you're not safe. And
Super not safe.
there are, like the video on security cameras and blaming things on the survivor and doing like victim blaming, things like that happens in that scene. And to Josh's point, that was to me the oh shit moment of like, wow, your one like ally is now gone, and it's also your sister, and like there was tension between two, and this is a moment of like clarity and okay, cool, maybe we could turn things around, and it gets taken away from you.
Like, you're thinking like this is the point in the ride where you think you're safe. It's gonna turn around. We're gonna have some like, she's gonna win, and then that happens. You're like, well,
yeah. And I think it's that again, that moment that is very similar to like Get Out, or at the end where you're like, as an audience, you collectively go, oh no.
Yeah.
No.
Oh
Yeah.
God, no. Kaylin?
Oh, and like and like when the scene is just like a perfectly safe scene. You're just like, oh, they're just at a restaurant, and it doesn't change until you start seeing the floating knife.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is,
and it whips into her hand.
Just like, oh. Anyway, next person.
Kaylin?
I like the I think a lot of the things that we're gonna like about this movie are the ways that the shocking parts, the how could you be this fucked up kind of stuff. Because what was for me was that, like, the confirmation that she wasn't crazy when the knife in the baggie in the attic with the phone,
Yeah.
with the, all the stuff that's being like, oh no, you're not crazy. We know that you're not crazy. You know that you're not crazy. Here's your confirmation, and also you're like still fucked. Like to have that kind of power and control over someone is just terrifying.
I mean,
And, like,
then
when
the
the
ensuing
flashes-
fight afterward, like,
Oh yeah, that was horrifying. I think the thing that I enjoyed most about the film was the fact that, like, as the audience member, you are questioning if you're crazy. You're like, wait, am I just experiencing this through her eyes then? Like, you're questioning your perspective.
If she's like an unreliable narrator.
Right, if she's an unreliable narrator, but then you get the, like, flashes when she's sleeping, but then you question, like, well, maybe that's just, that's still from her perspective, and she's, like, dreaming that this is happening. Like a half awake thinking she's seeing something. So the film does a very good job of making sure that you feel just as uncertain about how you feel about what's going on as she does. To give you that feeling of kind of like an instability and not being certain what you should trust or believe. So I like that a lot about it.
I love the I just love the silent moments and the very, like, eeriness. Like,
that long hallway.
There's a shot that's actually in the trailer that didn't make it in the film, and she, I think it's in the home. It's at the home, or it's at the health facility where, like, people are like, "Are you okay?" And then she's like looking, she's been through the ringer, and she's like, "There's someone sitting in that couch right now," and then you see like the indentions, but like they didn't. I don't think that's in the film. The closest thing you got was like her pulling the blanket, and then you see the two steps on the blanket. You're like, "Oh god,
oh god!"
Like, and to me, I think that's like the cool thing, like in a most primal way of this film. And I think it's something because I'm a male, I'm a straight male, of like, I've never experienced like a gaslighting like this. And so like, it's a complete foreign experience, where like the more primal fear is more of like, you're not alone in the dark. Right. And I think that's the most like basic version of this film, where like the deeper, things that it's hitting on is the experience of like what it is to be gaslit in a very violent and dangerous situation. And it's something that, like, I have a privilege to never have experienced that. And I think that's why it's such a important film, because it gives you the tiniest peephole into like what people's lives may be like. Obviously, again, there are genre elements to this that make it a sci-fi or whatever, but like, I love that this places that same kind of fear and terror that I think everyone should be cognizant of, because I think that's like what genre films can do best. It's like you start talking about really real things, but you use something fantastical in a way to kind of express it, so people feel like, oh, I can easily digest this conversation, because no one wants to feel talked down to. But what this film does is, like you said, Caitlin, it brings you in. And it's like, now you are the one being gaslit. You are the one that's like, no one trusts you, and it's like not your fault, but somehow like everything gets blamed on you. And you're just like, did I really hit her? I didn't hit her, I swear. And then like, your friend, like, you got to leave the house. And it's like, oh my God. And, you lose everything, you lose your sanity, you lose yourself. And like, but I love, one of my favorite things, this is also a big spoiler, is the very end, is the fucking, to me, justice. I know it's revenge and it's a little different, but like, how she fucking gets him back. And I'm like, and she fucking knows where the cameras are, and she steps back and away just so the cameras can't see her. And she just looks at this man who has tortured her for so many years. And she's just like,
oh yeah. Oh
like,
yeah.
fucking get it, sister. And I'm just
Well.
like, oh, get, oh. And that's the thing where it's like, Josh, I think you mentioned, like, I love it when a villain gets their comeuppance. But to me, it's just kind of like, it's that, like, you gave me so much shit. You fucking deserve way more than this. You deserve way worse than this. But, like, at least at the end of the day, you get to see that, like, you are not the master of my life. And I'm like,
Yeah. That was one of mine. But, I mean, this movie also talks about a lot of, like, it's not just, like, gaslighting. It's that controlling nature of, like, domestic abuse. As somebody who grew up seeing my mother experience some of this, like the beginning scene and then finding out what kind of situation she was in and the amount of pressure or tension with every single action that she took at the beginning scene of, like, you know, opening up the step stool, moving the camera,
the creaking of the stairs,
anything that could possibly, like,
alert,
cause
set
noise,
anything off.
And then when the dog goes off, you're like, like, no. But the dog's trapped too.
Yeah, when she took the shock collar off, I was like, no, baby.
No, baby.
But then, like, when she gets her sister takes her out, and then Adrian, like, punches the door or punches the window open, and it's like, oh my God. And it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But I love how, like, they start the film that way too, because, like, immediately you're on edge. You're like,
it puts it puts you where you're supposed to be. Like, it puts you in a because I think that it's like welcoming isn't the right. It places you in where the character is.
It hijacks you.
It hijacks you, and for the rest of the film, you kind of feel the nerves that she does.
Yeah,
where you're just like, you're always on edge of, like, what's
he's gonna come out of the darkness and punch my lights out.
And I think to your point, like, technically, quote unquote, it does welcome you because you paid the ticket to watch it. You paid the service to stream this, right? So you walked in this movie knowing you're going to watch this, and you're like, oh, okay, like, you have grabbed me
mistake.
like a small person and put me on the seat. You're like, you watch now. You're like, okay, yes, I'm watching now. And I think, again, it just does it so well where you're like, it doesn't, like, throw you all this exposition. It just does it to you. And you're like, make it, survive, get away from this person.
And how they handled his brother, Tom, that was like the minute they introduced him, I'm like, oh no, he's coming in. He's gonna, okay.
He's
I see
the
what's
bad
happening.
boy.
Well, like, Adrian's a puppet master, and that's what she establishes from the beginning. So as soon as, you know, she goes to meet with the brother, and he's like, yeah, he's a bad guy. It's like, oh man, he's had since you guys were children. You're fucking more warped than anyone could ever be, because he knows your psychology.
There's a lot
down
to
when
unpack
you were
there.
tiny. So it's like the minute you're like, oh, his brother works for the company. Yeah, he's gonna die for a cause he doesn't actually believe in, aka his brother, and then he does. And of course Adrian is, oh, it was my brother. He is the one. And you're like, nah, you piece of shit.
And so that's funny that you say that, because I was still, again, naive. And so, like, watching it, and when she meets with the brother, I'm like, oh yeah, so Adrian was the bad guy. Like, he's been a terrible person all his life, and like, he has victims close to him. And then when all that happened, and then, like, you know, obviously as the film continues going on, you're like, I think this is the new bad guy, right? Because I don't know what the twist is. And then all of a sudden, like, when the whole twist happened, I was like, oh.
Yeah. I think I've been subjected to some pretty intense gaslighting in a variety of situations, to the point where I had whole masses of people not talking to me because they misunderstood situations that were framed by someone. It was only after, like, several days that they talked to me, and I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, they told me this and this and this. And I'm like, none of that happened. and you just feel insane because everyone believes this other person.
Yeah, because when
That's
it's
only
one
like
person,
one
you're
example.
like, when it's one person, you're like, okay, whatever. But when it's multiple people, it just like starts
that also know you and have known you for years. So for them to all of a sudden break trust with you when you have established trust with them and you don't get the option to speak for yourself, and then, after an event like that, then you start to see how that person interacts with other people and you realize how much it permeates everything. Like, one of the reasons long ago I started keeping a journal was because I was in a situation with someone who was gaslighting me so badly. I had to keep a journal to keep track of what
straight.
I had said, what they had said, and what actually happened. Because months down the road, I would be like, this is what we talked about. They're like, no, it's not. I never said that. You're being crazy. This is what you said. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I wrote it down. But then you feel even more crazy because you're like, why am I explaining this? What is happening? And then, you see, that's why, like, when Tom came in, not you, Tom.
Oh, geez. I'm like, I was going to make a joke, but I'm like, gaslighting is really serious and I don't want to make a joke.
Yeah,
but then when you said,
don't make it.
And then when you were like, when Tom came in, I'm like, is she going to make a joke about me?
No.
I was like, oh my God, she beat me to the punch.
No. No, the brother Tom. That's why, like, when the brother came in, I'm like, oh yeah, when you were like growing up with someone who's like a pro gaslighter and is in a position of power where they can manipulate anything. He's a very powerful person.
He's like a Silicon Valley powerhouse.
Oh, I was just gonna.
Who works with the government?
I was just gonna say, like, he is to add on. He's like. He's more terrifying than somebody like Jason or Michael Myers. He's good looking. He's strong. He's smart. He's charismatic. He's a narcissist. Like that is incredible. People with a lot of charm, like,
get away with
dangerous. The most evil people.
They are dangerous, and like, if you are a charming person, like, with great power comes great responsibility.
I know. I'm kidding.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Glad
That's why I grew this mustache, so I don't have I'm not charming anymore.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, that's why, like, when I went into this movie, and it kind of, that flavors your experience when it comes from a very real place in your life. You watch it through a different lens. Like, for me, this wasn't a thriller. This was like, oh yeah, that. Like, I was not subjected to the horrific things that she was subjected to, but I have a taste of
what
how
gaslighting
intense that
looks
kind
like.
of experience can
It rhymes.
be. Yeah. It rhymes.
And I think to your point, I think that's like a really masterful way of kind of like, again, like the H.G. Wells original book was like some dude just took a potion and then he became invisible and he would just do bad things. And the whole allegory of like what the invisible thing is kind of like, when there is no social contract anymore for you to do good and you don't get rewarded for doing good, you do bad. And so what you do is like the original story is like you sleep with like you rape the queen of whatever kingdom and you kill her husband, and because there's no one that will catch you. And that's the cautionary tale of what I think the invisible potion, the thing. And again, it's like in this film they superimpose it into a world of technology and where you're tracked everywhere you are. And for people who are watching it, I feel you, people who have slight phobias or huge phobias of what are those pods?
Trypophobia.
Yeah. That also, it didn't trigger me, but I was like, don't like this. I don't like this at all. Because the suit is a bunch of small little camera lenses.
Yeah.
And the director has said, he's like, I didn't mean for that to happen. I'm sorry, but it made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really like that they took this story and put it into a 2020 world where like everything just feels very like this can happen. This could happen. This could be happening right now because there's a lot of technology that we're playing with that we just don't know the repercussions of putting it in the wrong place or in the wrong hands. And like, no one wants to talk about how some of the greatest things that you interact with every day, like the internet and technology, are all created by people who probably aren't super great in society. because they're just different. They just think differently and they're wired differently. Not saying that they should be condemned, but there needs to be a bigger focus on them as a human being because they do see the world differently. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever have a conversation with Elon Musk because he just might be like thinking about different things at all the time. And it's, not to say because he has Asperger's, but it's because like his brain just sees like me as like, oh, this potentially could be like someone who develops this kind of workflow. I'm like, I don't even see myself in that position, but he might. And so it's like, it's all those things, like how we see each other, how we see the world, how other people see us.
The different lenses.
Yeah. And this film just does it in such a way. I mean, other than like, I know we're talking a lot about the film, but like particular moments, I love all the little invisible man things, like going outside, breathing the cold air, the breath,
yeah.
the burnt,
James getting
sausages.
the hell beat out of him, and you can't like.
Oh my god!
You're like, holy crap!
And you start thinking, like, does he have super strength? Because Aldous Hodges is a buff boy. He's a buff man.
But when you don't
but when you don't know where the punches are going to come from, or like
some
you
of your
can't, you
defenses
can't
is
plan.
down. Like we talked about in Kiki's delivery service, of like when there's doubt, like you lose some of your like your power, so to speak, and like. He has no idea what's that. So first, he's finding out that his friend, who he thought was crazy, is not crazy, and he's being hit by what?
So wait, are you saying all those Steven Seagal movies where he's like blinded by some sand aren't real? No,
Sorry,
buddy.
Another favorite part, very thing. I remember Tom and I had a conversation because we had both seen this movie, and the title sequence, the beginning title sequence with the ocean and the title. I was like,
so
it was so silly, but it was like,
cool.
Go you, Lee. Go you.
But like I appreciate it because like also, what is water, right? Water washes out all like the bad, like it's life. But what does it reveal? It reveals that there's something behind that we cannot see. And it's like, but also it does seem very like 2006 or something like that.
A little bit. But I liked it.
You know
I'm
what?
about it.
Fine.
Also like, there's just like, yeah, to Caitlin's point where like all the things go missing and she can't find it, and then she finally finds it, and it's just like, but then obviously the big shot where she pours the paint and then like you just see like a golf ball man and you're like, oh god, it's like there is someone there, and it's just like, but like also the fight scene, or like I guess the murdering scene in the hallway where he's just taking all these cops, and you're just like, this guy is a weapon of mass destruction. And I'm like, and he is just a normal person. Imagine if there was a trained operative.
He's like, he's one of those guys that probably like, he thinks he's so much better than everybody that he probably works out and trains so he can be physically better than people too. But shit, I lost my thought.
Caitlin, anything? Well, Josh thinks.
I love how well they did at being like, every respite she gets and like tries to like pay forward the fortune of her misfortune. Like when she gets all that money, she immediately like pays for her tuition so she can go to school, and just like all of it just
down
like
the drain.
It's all, well, it's such a good example of like people who are like that. All of it is built like a house of cards. Like they are waiting for you to think you have stability so they can pluck one thing. And it's totally pervasive. Every aspect of your life becomes to be controlled by that person. And if you fight back, they will take away everything.
You are punished.
You are punished wholly and completely. And it's like the like nest of security that was built for you is just taken away. It's like, go, get out. I don't care anymore.
I did like what I was saying about punishing is that the film has thriller aspects, but it doesn't punish you for it. Like Final Destination kind of punishes a little bit of like getting closer to the screen because you're like, I want to see what's gonna happen, and then they like throw in like a complete gore shot. You're like, oh god, I didn't want to see that. Where like here, people die. It's not like super gory, but also like the scary moments where you see him in the suit, and you're initially just terrified because you just don't know what this is, what you're looking at, like in the rain, and it's got like the digital stuff happening to it. You're like, it's a wide shot, so you're like, oh my god, this is terrifying. Like it's like in Signs, the scariest shot in Signs. And I won't spoil that for everybody, but like if you know, and this film does that too, where it's like, oh man, I am terrified because I see it now. I see this thing that I haven't been able to see, but it isn't like I want to close my eyes. At least for me, it's not. And I really appreciate when thrillers do that, and they very well veer away from the B slasher horror stuff.
Yeah.
So favorite characters, or we got more favorite parts? Josh, did you get yours back?
It's kind of a qualm. So
okay.
Oh, okay.
We'll go to favorite characters, and yeah, one of them can't be Cecilia because she's the main character.
Okay.
So we'll do two. Kaylin, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think James and Sydney were actually my favas, just because like they were the latter. He's like, thanks, so sweet. But that I liked that it was just like a platonic friendship of support. I feel like those aren't really showcased in a way that people aren't like, well, but why won't they kiss now? It's like, no, that's actually a pretty legitimate thing. There's a lot of
you actually really want this.
Huh?
It's like you actually really want this. You want a really good friend.
Who's
gonna help you out. You don't need to be jumping from one relationship to another relationship.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of over romanticization of like jumping from one relationship to the next, and I think it's nice to be like, no, this is just a place for you to like chill and get your life together, and that. And then Sydney is just like, Sydney's really sweet and cute, and I want her to accomplish her fashion dreams.
And the nice thing about with James too is kind of like he offers a sense of like, he is a pretty strong masculine presence without being dominating, without him like strong arming every situation he's in. He's very like concerned and very empathetic. I guess I'll go into mine real quick. It's gonna be James and then Cecilia as the second. If one of them can't be, so the other one is. Because yeah, obviously Cecilia, like you follow her journey, but like with James, you just really enjoy that. Like one, he is in law enforcement, and it's like, sadly, again, I have to say this, where it's like in a movie you're watching, like, oh, he's one of the good ones. He's not being portrayed as like a bad piece of shit cop. He's like, oh, he's a really good guy, and like
he's doing the best that he can. I mean, he's in the crazy circumstances that he ends up being pulled into. He's kind of like, I have a daughter. Like I
and I think I like the thing that he doesn't blame her. He doesn't say like, this is your fault, get out. He's just like, hey, right now this is not a good place.
Doesn't he? I'm sorry if I'm misremembering, but doesn't he say, he's like, I'm not gonna say that you're crazy, but what you're saying right now sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've tried to pick that up because when a really good a tactic to talk about with people is like, it sounds like this, lets people feel like they're not being accused. So it's like, it sounds like you're upset, or it sounds like you don't like that, so let's talk about it. Versus like, you're upset, he's like, that's not good. Like it's a really good de-escalating word actually. And we can talk a little bit about that, but no. But James is great, and I love just the first few moments you get with him, where she walks outside and she gets the mail. And he's like, "Oh, look at you!" Like he's congratulating the small milestones, even though like in a privileged person's eyes like me, you can kind of almost see it as like, is he being patronizing? But then when you turn on your empathy and you're like, oh no, this is huge. This is a big deal. Like for someone who's been afraid to go outside, and she locks all the doors and all that stuff, like those small milestones mean something. And he's understanding of that. And like, you have to, congratulate your friends on those milestones because they won't see it. And I just love that it was captured so well, and especially from someone who is a father, and obviously it looks like a single father. So it's like there's a lot of really good things that they did just with perfect characterization.
Yeah.
So Josh.
Yeah. I mean, for the same reasons, it's going to be Cecilia first, and then James. I mean, James. It's already been said. With Cecilia, it's pretty much already been said. But I'll add this: that Elizabeth Moss, though she's in a lot these days, I still think that she flies under people's radar.
Mm-hmm.
Like she gets she's kind of underrated, so to speak, and like you just watch her in everything that she does, and she's really incredible. Like she's incredible to watch.
First thing I ever saw her in was in Get Him to the Greek as Daphne.
Oh yeah.
But no, like yeah, I think also I think there is a sense of like a shitty male dominated audience where it's like she's not like the hot final girl. She's like, to me, she's like, oh, you're gonna see a really good performance and like this character transformation, which you wouldn't get from like I don't know, like Friday the 13th or Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's like, yeah, you look for the hot chick who's pretty much a virgin, and it's like all stuff like this.
I thought you were gonna say Freddy versus Jason, and I was like, that's the one you pick.
That's the one I pick. Yep, Freddy versus Jason. I said Jason and Friday the 13th. So I'm like, I was like, but Nightmare on Elm Street. But yeah, so it's like those kind of things where it's like you don't look for those things in this film, and you take like a real story. So
yeah,
yeah. So now qualms. Qualms, 2 qualms per person. Who wants to go first?
Tom does.
I don't have any qualms. I think again. I from the very beginning, I said I think this is what films at $7 million should strive for.
that amazes me.
Absolutely. Like again, that's what I'm saying. Like these directors who do these small budget films and rake in like not $200 billion on the opening week or whatever. Like all this crap like needs to be thrown out to the side, because these are the people who are like pushing and actually like elevating film.
Well, it's like they say they know how to, because I've worked on a few. My buddy Buzz that I've talked about,
shout out to Buzz.
He produces and directs horror films, and the things that he tells me that they get away with, like having a low budget and the way that they pull off some things, you're just like, that is just like, that's rock star. Like, wow.
Yeah. It's very much like the crack team who steals like a famous painting versus the person who had like a $200 million budget who's like, oh yeah, I just rerouted the original order and shipped to my house instead. And you're like, oh my God. It's like, oh, of course. So yeah, no qualms for me. Not at all. I can't in good faith be like, yeah, this could have been better. I'll be like, nah. I saw what you did. You went out there. You got it. You did it responsibly. You came out and you're like, this is it. And you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Josh?
I mean, I think this is one of those qualms where it's kind of a stretch, but I need to say it. And I think it's not the movie's fault. It's just the genre. Is that I hate logic gaps or things that when characters do things that you're just like, no. When you're inspecting all of the stuff, your inclination is to take the knife out of the Ziploc bag and put your fingerprints all over. I'm just like, and it's probably because I watch way too many crime dramas where you're like, oh, they can get you from that. They can get you from that. Well, you just left evidence. Good for you, man. I think that it's just like, It doesn't make the movie suffer for me. It's just things that you're like, no.
I'm glad. Did that get used against her later on? They found all this stuff in the attic, and
the knife is the knife that killed her sister.
So I think she took it out and brought it downstairs.
Okay.
That, as I recall, I could be wrong.
For some reason in my mind, in recollection, it just feels like he snuck into the kitchen of the restaurant, grabbed a knife, and walked his happy butt over. But to your point, yeah.
I think that it's the knife that kills her sister. Because
Well,
I think they make a point to say, oh no, I could be wrong because he puts it in her hand.
Yeah, and that's
the knife in the attic is the one from the kitchen. They
Mhm.
took it when she was cutting vegetables for
Mhm.
that meal. So it was literally just like they're taking it, making her feel like she was crazy because something moved that she had left there. And then that's what ended up in the attic.
But I mean, for me, it's like, if that's the case, then why put it in a Ziploc bag? It makes me think that it was saved for later.
Well, I think also all roads lead to the prison or the jail and her making a deal with Tom.
Right.
And, you know, I forgot to mention that in one of my favorite parts when she fucking gets him. It's like, there you are. I'm like, that's shout out to my boy Isaac, this bait ace. It was bait ace when she stabbed him. Anyways, but, no, yeah, I think to your point, like, but also to your point, like, everything you could do to incriminate yourself, and that's what you do, like, God. But it's tough, you know, like, obviously a person who's under duress is going to not make perfect decisions.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, that's all I got. It doesn't. Once you hear my score, it doesn't affect it all that much. So, Kaylin?
But let's Kaylin.
So I, in the same kind of way, a little bit logic gaps of, she went to steal the camera suit, the like spare camera suit that was sitting in there. She was caught on camera getting the suit, figuring out how it works. He was still there watching her the whole time. So how did he not figure out, one, where her cubbyhole was, and two, that she had taken the suit, and that's like, that she should not leave that final dinner at no point in time to like go over there. Like, for him being this kind of Sauron all-seeing eye type thing, he had a lot of blind spots, which just didn't make sense to me. Because I understand that, like, yes, she would have been around long enough to know where his blind spots are, but it felt like for her to go into that room and take the suit and be on camera, he had to have known. So I feel like this penultimate moment of her getting away with it just didn't hit for me, because I'm like, but he saw you.
I think two things that you actually illuminate with that. One, how has she been a prisoner of his and never knew about the suit?
Right.
Two, to your point, I think with that, and you're like, how does this happen? Again, this doesn't change anything. It's not meant to change your thing. Is like, he was so confident and he did not expect her to actually act this way.
Right.
And it's like, she had all this time that she could have killed him when she was with him. Why is she doing it finally now?
Right.
And to that point, like, to me, that's where like it's the pride before the fall, where it's like, I've won. You know, like, all the police think it's this, you know, you're off the hook and I can get rid of all of this shit. But
yeah,
to your point, I could see where that comes from. Because I was like, yeah, I remember like when she walks into the house, when she takes like the Uber, the Lyft, like, you see angles from the security cameras, not from like the omniscient camera. So like, it's like, oh, it's definitely there. So if he was like on top of it and then he comes home and like, he like catches her, like, why when he investigate what she had done.
Right.
So it's like, you know, you would technically be like, okay, is my other suit there? You know, like, look for, like, you know, when your mom, you know, your parents clean your room, you're like, oh my God, what are the nudie magazines? Like, did they find it? You know, like, that's the first thing you worry about. You're like, oh my God. And you check those, you know, things that you don't want to be revealed to the world.
And especially like with her cubbyhole, he had to have, if he is that type of controlling person, he would have retraced all of her steps to figure out what she did. So in my mind, I was ready for him to already have known about the cubbyhole, to have already taken the suit, because he would have undone all that she did to figure out how she left so she could never do it again. So there was just a couple of like logic gaps there for me that I'm like, okay. But if they had given me like I didn't check on you anymore because I knew that I had won, blah, 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 and then he died, then I'd be like, okay, sure. But the rest of the time I was like, but you had to have known. You're Mr. I Spy with my little eye all over the place. And then the other thing, which is not a qualm with, it's not a qualm with the movie, because they literally didn't give her any other option but to kill him, really. But since this is kind of a message for those out there I think this is more of a film for other people to understand what it's like to be gaslit. I think that's like
You're about
the
to
kind of goal.
You're about to say that I don't like the thing that Tom said earlier.
What do you mean?
That she kills him at the very end.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it.
And I know what you're talking about too. Like, because in the end, it is like saying like, all right, everyone who's ever been gaslit, just kill your abuser.
Just kill your abuser,
and it's like
that's all good.
That's not the right lesson you should learn from this.
And the reality is
really,
that, like,
that's what you took from this? Kill him.
But no.
Well,
But the reality of like being in that kind of a situation is that like not only do you have to figure out how to get away, but you have to live with the fact that they're going to be alive for the rest of your life too. Mm-hmm. And you might interact with them.
Which is reality of the situation.
Which is the reality of the situation is like your abuser doesn't just croak and then you get to walk away victoriously in your cute dress.
And like sometimes
you have to.
And to that point, and what the film I think almost got into is like if the person were to stay alive for the rest of their life, and if there's someone who's like a big influence, you may see them in the news quite often. You may see them on social media all the time. And so everything kind of, all roads lead back to that person. Which, go ahead. Sorry.
And that's like, I had wanted there to be, in my version of this film that would make it feel more complete and whole for me, which I understand is not the purpose of this film, so I'm not holding it against it, just more of like my personal perspective on it, is that I wish that she had found a way to outsmart him and outmaneuver him to get him rather than becoming him.
Yeah.
Because to me, she just became him. She became she got to give him the final gaslight and then murder him. And that just, to me, I'm like, oh, well, now she's going to be even more traumatized from murdering someone.
Well, yeah, I think that is an ideological battle. Because, like, for me, it's a little bit of like it's the Batman clause, right? It's like, if I killed, then I'm just as bad as everyone's like, if you kill one Joker, you're fine. You just, when you eat one piece of ice cream, you're like, oh, I can't stop myself from eating it all. But to your point, it's kind of like, how does that get articulated in this kind of storytelling, right? Because I think the same argument could be made of like, well, what she's going to do is try to find other people who might be suffering as she is and, could become an avenger of some sort. But like, again, a power unchecked is still a corrupted thing.
Right. I mean, so kind of my little addendum for that was his weakest link was actually, was his brother, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
So, what if she had found the crack in his armor and found a way to talk to Tom about unraveling everything? And then his brother getting kind of like the relief from having to be under this gaslighting upbringing as well. Because like everyone just dies in this rather than what is it like to keep living with this person still being around.
It plays to the genre versus playing to the reality.
Exactly. Which I get is the whole point of this movie. But in trying to make it grounded in the modern era, it, to me, kind of did a disservice of what it's like to live with that and continue living with it, because you don't just get to kill your abuser.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like just because I guess for me, like I loved the play into the genre of like getting back. It does take away from the reality of like, what can you say? I think it kind of almost walks a little thin line of like, people were freaking out about Joker and they're like, oh my God, we're, we're celebrating a murderer. And it's like, no, this film shouldn't have to tell you like killing is bad. Because it already does. And in this film, like it also does kind of show like at the very end with James being like, you know what you're doing. Like, this isn't technically the right way to go about it. And she's like, but it was what I needed to do. And again, the listeners and all that stuff, I know there might be some impressionable people, but like, obviously don't take the wrong lessons of like, go exact vengeance on, the people who you've survived. But, taking the story of like, it's not unnoticed. And there are people who pay attention and that this story is important. But yeah, I to me, I'm just like, yes, fucking kill this motherfucker because he deserves to fucking die. Because you hate the guy and like you barely even see his face throughout the movie, but you just like the presence of him. You're like, I don't even know how this guy looks like, and I hate him. So
Yeah.
now we'll get to rating, the final rating. So who's going first? I'm going first because I have no votes against me. And guess what number I wrote?
You were a 5.
I wrote a 5.
Yeah, okay.
Shout out to my other boy Nick. This is friggin' sweet. This movie was friggin' sweet for me. And I wouldn't change it. And I would love, and I see that they're going to be continuing these kind of styled horror films, which with Frankenstein and
Oh, interesting.
the monster from the lagoon or all that stuff. So I'm like, give me more. Give me more. So next is Caitlin.
I gave it a 4.5.
4.5.
It's still a really good movie within the genre that it is. They did a really good job with building tension and what I was talking about with like making you wonder if you're crazy
And you said you're not a big fan of horror films, right?
They're growing on me. I have watched so many of them,
But like,
thanks to my boyfriend in high school. But like, I'm starting to understand them a little more now. And while I appreciate what this is doing within the thriller genre and the suspense and everything, it just tread that line a little too close for me. It felt like kind of the right message is in there, but it's presented in the wrong way.
I just mean in the sense of like, just because it's in the horror genre, there is like a bit of snootiness, like they're just garbage films. Where like I think this film kind of bubbles above like that.
Well, I think they're making better thriller / horror films nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was definitely a lot. We have like Halloween, Alien, The Thing, right? And
Yeah.
I think for some reason those always get washed over when like you hear about like, all right, here's Nightmare on Elm Street 8, where he comes back from the circus.
But don't you remember that this film are in the genre too? Like, yeah, I get it.
But yeah, there could be a lot of intelligence that is translated in horror films. I just wanted to hear, because I know, Caitlin, you're not too privy to them. So I was like, I think we've been trying to do on the show is like talk about these kind of not like well-made, celebrated ones.
No, I mean, I've seen a lot of garbage ones. I've seen a lot of great ones. It's just, honestly, it's the like message that got me more than anything. Because would I watch it again? Yeah. Would I pay more attention to things? Yeah. It's just coming away from this left me a little disgruntled because it's like, that's not an option for me. That's not something I got to do.
The lasting effect is not that it's a 1.5, but it's a 4.5 of like, it doesn't hit the mark at the end, but it's also still just a well-made film. That's why it's still in the high range. And so it's like, it's not something to sleep on or to fart at.
Yeah. So. Yes. Correct.
Just saying.
4.8.
4.8 for Josh. So you have it here. Caitlin is the grump of the week.
I'm the grump.
Yeah, she is.
I'm the grump.
And with 38% of the votes, and so she wasn't the big choice. So I gotta do some shout outs.
Shouty outs.
For some reason, I keep not having the image up or all the votes for some reason. But all of the votes for Caitlin. So, Mr. Bradley P, shout out to you. Brock P. And Noe S voted for Caitlin.
No, hello.
So there you have it. Caitlin is the grump of the week. All those who voted for Josh, thanks for playing, but very close.
Thanks for playing.
It wasn't going to be me. So the one person who voted for me, hey, I'm glad you acknowledge me. I'm glad you notice. But like,
Thank you for looking at me.
I think I was really juiced to like have the last few episodes that we've done on the show, because I think they were my picks, and I feel like I was like really vying for like Invisible Man, Invisible Man, Invisible Man,
The Invisible Man.
The Invisible Man. Drop the
there he goes.
It's very important. The Invisible Man.
The.
Well, that's it. That is the episode on The Invisible Man for 2020. I almost said 2020.
2020. Just 2020.
It was a year.
I want to live up until
It was.
2020.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening or watching, however you are ingesting this. Let us know what you thought of The Invisible Man from 2020. Go on over to that Discord, nerdon.tv/Discord. There is a movies channel in there. Continue the conversation over there. There's a lot of really cool people in there, so won't be alone.
Never alone.
If you are new to Nerd On, check out our website, nerdon.tv. It has all the information on everything that we do, all of our podcasts, our different channels. Head on over to that YouTube. That's where we post all of these episodes in 4K. So check that out. We also stream almost daily. There's a couple of days we don't, but otherwise we are there. Check it out, nerdon.tv/Twitch. And like I said at the top, if you liked what you heard today, please stop by, rate and review, and share us with your friends and family. That is how we grow. It is. I keep saying that because it's that important. It's how we grow. So share us. Do the thing. Put us in front of people. But yeah, that's been the episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourselves. You know the drill. As always, Nerd on.
Nerd on.
Ending broadcast.
Or at least give me some science logic of like, a bug stitched my hand together or something. It's just too much of a clean cut. And it fixed his fabric. I thought this was juice for your skin and blood and bones.
It's a powerful potion. It's a healing potion.
Not for jackets.
I mean, wasn't that jacket leather, which was also flesh?
No, it was cloth.
Are you sure?
No, but I'm upset.